I just started sharing more about my mental health. And I cannot pinpoint like the exact moment when I decided to like anthropomorphize my anxiety as a little scribble. But he just always felt that way. Like that's what anxiety feels like in my body, just like this cloud of like tangled knots that I like have no idea how to even start unraveling. So that's I think where the inspiration for his little body comes from. But when I illustrate like our conversations, it's just truly how it feels.
What's up, guys? This is the Mentally Shredded Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whedon, and today we have a special guest by the name of Haley Weaver. How are you doing, Haley?
I'm so good. Thank you, Chris. How are you?
I am well. I am well. I'm excited to share your story with our audience today, especially you being in the mental health space, being a writer and illustrator. I really believe you'll be able to add a lot of value in just you sharing your story. I'm excited to hear your story as well. And so just thank you for spending this time with us.
Yeah, I'm so excited too. I mean, you guys are doing such incredible work in the mental health sphere. So excited to be part of it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So you are located in Seattle, Washington now, correct?
I am.
Okay. Okay. How did we make it from Carolina to Seattle?
Um, Kind of on a whim. My best friend from college moved out here for an AmeriCorps position, and I visited. And as someone who only lived in Charlotte, and then a little bit up the East Coast for school, I'd never been out to the Pacific Northwest, and I just fell in love because it has water and mountains. It doesn't get humid in the summer, which was just absolutely mind blowing to me. The winters are a little tough, but I made the choice to move. My amazing parents ended up helping me drive across the country. So it turned into like the coolest trip with my parents. And this was when I was 24. So I was also just like on the kind of in that classic early 20s, like, what am I doing? And so it was a really cool opportunity to like not necessarily start over, but just kind of reframe the world. And I ended up finding a very terrible job when I got here. So it worked out kind of, and the rest is history.
There we go. So you find this terrible job and somehow you end up staying. So that
Yes.
tells me how amazing the environment must be.
Yeah. Everything outside of the job was amazing. So I have not even thought about returning, much to my parents' dismay, but it's fine.
There we go. I've heard good things about Seattle. I'll have to make it out there at some point, but the from the hiking and the out just all of the outdoorsy type things.
Come in August when Charlotte is sweltering, and it will be the best decision you've ever made.
I will add that to the list for August.
Great.
That's awesome. So you have this illustration and business called Haley Drew This. I kind of want to just dive in to how that came to be and what was the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, so I actually started it when I still lived in Charlotte. I was working my first job out of college. It was a desk job. It was also not quite my favorite activity of my life, but I felt really drained in that position. I think this is a really common feeling for folks coming out of, whatever schooling level they're coming out of. It oftentimes is in it added up to like in your head. And I've always been a very creative person, and my job was not, fulfilling that. So I started drawing, just do like comics. I'd never really done that before. I've always loved doodling. And to hold myself a little accountable, I started putting them on Instagram, and this was January of 2017. And I think I just got on Instagram at the right time because it grew super organically. Like I think I got like a couple thousand followers within the first month, and I was just like, "Whoa, who are all of these people?" So I had no idea it was going to turn into anything beyond just like a little art project that I would maybe share with family and friends. And it just kind of took off from there. It's been pretty wild to think about.
Wow, that is awesome. 2017, I am not sure if I was even on Instagram at the time. I was one of those people that downloaded it, deleted it, downloaded it, deleted it. And I've done
Honestly,
that
that
just
that sounds healthier.
yeah. I was like, Chris, maybe show some consistency if you're trying to build something here. So, but no, that's great. And so Haley drew this. Now, you have a story on Instagram that I personally related to regarding anxiety, and it was a story between your anxiety and yourself. Can you talk about how that idea kind of came out, and was that a specific story that you were dealing with, and you were like, I want to share this with the world?
Yeah, I think for, like, the first year and a half, I did not share any super personal stories. It was a lot of very, like, surface level relatable content, like, "What to do if you have a zit," and I mean, like, kind of fun, but nothing that was actually, scraping the next level of what was going on in my life, and I mean, one of the harder things when I moved to Seattle was just getting used to the very gray and wet and dark winters, and that coincided with some mental health struggles, and I ended up having my first really bad panic attack out here, and it was really scary. It was really debilitating. And I don't know if it was just like a I don't care anymore mentality, but I decided to just share about it on Instagram. And it was like the biggest response I'd ever gotten to sharing something, which of course makes sense. People are drawn to vulnerable and like real stuff, right? And so I remember being floored though. I couldn't believe how many people had either experienced really debilitating anxiety, panic attacks, and people were sharing how they coped. And of course, that looks different for everyone. So I just felt like I was getting this like flood of information. So I think that's when I first started to think, okay, there's like a really safe, I mean, I'm really lucky. My corner of the internet has felt very safe and positive for the most part. But I think I remember feeling like, okay, this is a really safe space to share my feelings and just what I'm going through. And it sounds like it's helping other people. I mean, people responding to me certainly helped me to read about. So I just started sharing more about my mental health. And I cannot pinpoint like the exact moment when I decided to like anthropomorphize my anxiety as a little scribble. But he just always felt that way. Like that's what anxiety feels like in my body, just like this cloud of like tangled knots that I like have no idea how to even start unraveling. So that's I think where the inspiration for his little body comes from. But when I illustrate like our conversations, it's just truly how it feels in my head. So
Wow.
that's where that comes from. And I just try to draw comics about that whenever like new conversations that with my anxiety that I feel like could be kind of funny to draw strike.
Yes. Yeah, so I relate so much to that because I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. I believe in 2020 two, if I'm not mistaken. So
Okay.
just about a year ago, and as I've been on this journey of self discovery and just learning more about my mental health, I realize now, and it was funny. I was talking to your mom about this. For those of you that don't know, I serve on the NAMI board of directors with Haley's mom. And so she shared what Haley was doing, and I was like, I absolutely have to have her on. So that was a little side note. But I've discovered that I've always had anxiety. I've had anxiety since high school and maybe before that, but I can actually pinpoint when it started showing up in high school, but I just never talked about it because I didn't know that's what it was, right? I essentially just taught myself how to power through when I was feeling uncomfortable, and I began to notice dips in performance in soccer. That is where it started showing up, and so for me specifically, when I was reading the story between your anxiety and yourself, I was like, man, that sounds so similar to what was going on in my head, even when I was playing in college or after college. And you're having these conversations like, Chris, get out of your head. Like I can remember moments being on the field or on the pitch and talking to myself, and I'm like, bro, if you don't focus right now, which is not good.
No, I relate to that so much. I had the exact same experience as a swimmer growing up, and my performance took a huge dip when I was a junior and started like overthinking every race and how important it was. And yeah, it's really scary when you're not sure how to even like live in your head.
Exactly. What so you touched on vulnerability. I have to go back there. I found how powerful it was to begin sharing, to begin to open up to my family and friends about what was going on and things that I was struggling with. And then I realized by sharing, all that did was allow other people to feel comfortable sharing what was going on in their life. Have you found that same response on social media or among your friend groups?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it gave me the tools to talk about it, first of all, which, I think I really struggled similar to you to, like, develop that as a kid and even a young adult, so that was really important and totally agree that, once you start sharing things about yourself, people are like, "Okay, they are not just like this perfect person. Like I can be myself around them too." So it's totally changed how I've interacted with like even my closest friends all the way to internet strangers. It's really cool.
Looking for a consulting firm that can help your organization achieve its full potential? Look no further than Deck Leadership. With over 25 years of experience in NASCAR, founders Mike Metcalf and Sean Pete know what it takes to lead high performing teams. They can help you uncover opportunities for diversity, efficiency, culture, and kindness, all while inspiring human brilliance. And if they can lead pit crews that can change 4 tires and fill 18 gallons of gas in less than 12 seconds, just imagine what they can do for your organization. Visit www.deckleadership.com for more information. Yeah. And would you consider yourself like a mental health advocate with your drawings? And because your drawings are very specific to mental health and anxiety, but not just that, right? You draw and illustrate on uh, relationships as well, and so I'm kind of just curious. Do you consider yourself just, hey, this is who I am and I'm putting all of this out there? Or would you consider yourself a mental health advocate?
Yeah, I think I'd consider myself both. I've always been really careful never to use like a specialist or anything, just because my last psychology class was 10th grade. But yeah, like advocate feels like the exact thing. I just want to make people feel comfortable and like in whatever headspace they're in. And then relationships feel important to me to illustrate, partially because I do think they're so important to my own mental health, just having like community and support. So it almost feels like that it like folds in kind of nicely.
Absolutely. And I see a ring on your hand, so I'm going to assume you're engaged.
Yeah, we got engaged this past October. Yes, my fiance, which word I don't know if I like that word, but he he has been great. He was in therapy before I even met him, which I was like green flag, and he's just been like super supportive of like all of the things I share, and then also just being a really great support system when things are hard, which I could never have like even imagined when like if I were to make my like perfect person list as a even younger person.
Yes. That's awesome. How important would you say that compatibility is when you are someone who has struggled with mental health? Because I've found that if people don't understand what that looks like, it's going to be very difficult to bring that up in conversation and try to navigate those waters. So, how important has that been for y'all's relationship?
It's super important. I feel like I tried to play the cool girl for like the first 3 or 4 months we dated, and then of course, as it always does, it like cracked and I just like started sobbing one night and he was like, "Oh my god, are you okay?" And he was so sweet and like very a good listener. I mean, they were all like great affirmations for his character, but it's that classic story of I'm going to hide it and then of course you can't forever. So I do think it's really important because there's no way to like live a lie, especially in a more intimate relationship, whether that's a romantic relationship, a friendship. I mean, there's just no way.
Yeah, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's very important. Even my friendships, romantically, as you pointed out, if I don't feel comfortable in my own skin around you and to be vulnerable and to share what's going on now at 33, I just choose not to have you around. But I know that's much easier said than done with some people if you're not used to putting up those barriers, if you will.
Yeah, no, it's so hard. But I also think it's like a great tool to navigate finding those relationships that work, even if you're like, dang, I really want this person to be part of my life, but I'm just not sure we're on the same wavelength here. That's
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. So I know right now mental health is like the in topic, and especially with social media today, right? I don't see social media going anywhere, and so I believe this is a topic that needed to be discussed. And honestly, because of COVID, it's
Oh my
kind of
gosh.
opened up to this door, and so I do not believe that this conversation is going to be pushed aside again. I do believe that people are going to begin to see mental health as health, and the same way we look at physical health or nutritional health, right? My question for you is, when do we get to a point where people are oversharing or possibly sharing in a manner in which it could be triggering for someone else? And has that been anything that you've had to navigate when you're illustrating?
That's such a good question. And I mean, the annoying answer is I don't know. I mean, I think it's great when people use like, even just the introduction of trigger warning and like share the triggers that could be introduced with their story. But yeah, I mean, it is hard because you do want to like give people the space to talk, but it's also like maybe this should be a conversation with someone who specializes in this rather than me who has no specialization in this. I mean, I know in my experience, I haven't had like a ton of struggles with like what I'm comfortable sharing because I've always been a little bit more reserved and private. So even just sharing, I feel like is has been a lot. But the funny thing is the response sometimes, like I'll get DMs with really personal and really sometimes just uh, a lot of information kinds of stories. And while again, I feel like really grateful to be a safe space for people, I'm also like, what do I do with this? I have no idea. So yeah, I don't have an answer for like what it should look like, but I do think that, just being really thoughtful and empathetic to like what the person receiving what you're going to say can hold, like maybe just have asking people if they have space as a precursor to sharing something heavier. But yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to watch how that unfolds.
Absolutely. So your illustrations have evolved over time, as you alluded to earlier. What do you see as far as maybe the next 10 years and the future of your illustrations and writing?
Yeah, well, so I actually have a book coming out like a little bit less than a year from now. And that's like it's been like the pinnacle of my career so far. It's been really exciting. It's all about my relationship with anxiety from like kind of what you were saying earlier, not knowing what it was when I was little to, managing that relationship as an adult and how that changes and what coping mechanisms look like. And it was like a really fun project to work on. Also very isolating and terrifying, but I won't go into that part. But I would love to do more projects like that. I have always wanted to write books. So I'm hoping this is just the first in a series of that. And then beyond that, I agree that social media is going to be around forever. So just figuring out how to continue to use it as like a tool rather than a draining space and make content that feels comforting to people.
Yes. So this book, I assume you've been working on for some time.
Oh my
Um,
gosh. Since like 2019, I I am very ready for it to be out in the world.
if you're anything like me, I accumulate just pictures and either illustrations of things that I feel like one day I'll use, right? Like and it's funny, I'm putting a documentary together right now, kind of
Oh, cool.
shedding the story of Mentally Shredded, how it came to be, and helping, just really wanting to be an advocate and to share this space with people um, who may be either suffering in silence and don't feel comfortable yet going to talk to somebody to say, hey, like, I'm not really sure what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just have all of this data that I've just, I don't know, kind of just accumulated. Luckily, I have the iCloud.
Oh,
So
yeah. We live for
it's
that, don't you worry.
exactly. And Google Drive, right? And so I don't know where this stuff is going to go, if all of it will even be shown one day. But the beauty is for me that it's been an outlet to when I am experiencing anxiety or if I'm in a place of depression, I don't know, like I become more creative. And so sometimes I'll just turn my camera on and I just talk to myself, right? Like sometimes I write or I do something that can help kind of calm my nerves and calm my mind. Is this kind of how your process is, or do you have a very specific process when you're creating?
I mean, I totally relate to that. Like, if you were to look at my journal, you'd be like, "This woman is unwell," because I feel like I only go to my journal when I'm not feeling good. Like, I'm never gonna go and write like, "I had a great day," period. It's always
Hmm.
like, the list of all the things going wrong. So yeah, I totally relate to that, using that coping mechanism, especially when it's things are hard. I mean, I am a firm believer that, like, everything you make, everything that you save or do, like, is leading somewhere to, like, whatever you end up making later. Like, it took all of the stuff you had to do before that to get there. So, I mean, I feel like even looking back at my earliest drawings, which some of them I'm like, "Oh, dear, those are bad." I'm like, "But that led me here." And so I do think that's a really cool part of the creative process is just, like, accepting that in order to get where you are, you had to grow through, all the different phases of your, artistic journey, one might say.
Yes, yes. I love that you said grow through. I love using that terminology as well instead of going through or growing through. Now, whether that's good or bad, if we're growing, we could be growing in the wrong direction, right? And
Yeah,
so
sure
um,
thing.
that is the why I stress the importance of personal development and really honing in on who it is that you want to be and how do you want to show up. I
Really.
believe that you are showing up as one of the best versions of yourself, and I look forward to seeing what you continue to create throughout this process.
Thank you. That means the
Yes.
world.
Yeah, of course, of course. And so I like to ask a very specific question at the end of everything. But before we get there, I have to know obviously, your parents are here in Charlotte, and I know your mom's going to listen to this. So, are there any plans of moving back this way, or do you plan on moving your parents closer to where you guys are?
The dream scenario, and this, of course, is so unlikely, but, like, I just imagine having, like, a home base in every place I wanna be. So, like, there's a home base in Charlotte, there's a home base in Seattle, maybe there's a home base in Hawaii, I don't know, but,
Yes.
just spreading out. It's definitely the hardest thing about being out here is, like, I'm super close to my parents, so, we FaceTime all the time, but it's not the same as you obviously know that too. So, we'll see. I do when I come home to visit, I try to stay for a couple weeks, so it feels like a little mini-cation at home.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I know it'll work out. My family's in Texas and they're
Mm,
constantly trying to get me to move back. And
yep.
so I'm like, you know what? I like the home base of Charlotte and then the home base in Texas. And then I love that you said Hawaii because a home base in Maui would be so awesome.
We'll meet offline to discuss the plan.
Yes, that's awesome. Well, as we get close to wrapping up here, I like to end with an affirmation. And I do this with every single guest, at least this season. We'll see if I continue it. But I kind of want you to just complete the sentence of I am. I'm very big on affirmations and they've been a huge part of my life and the foundation that I've rebuilt on this mental health journey. And so if you could just finish the sentence of I am, and then we'll get close to wrapping up here.
I am moving forward.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. And would you care to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think when I'm really struggling, I have to remind myself that even, like, the smallest steps, like, could be just like a little blip, but or a big step. It's all, growth in one direction, or at least, like, in linear space of life, right? And that you just have to keep moving forward to get through it. There's something on the other side.
Always, always. Yes. That is the beauty of life, is that life is going to keep going regardless, right? And so
It sure is.
so we have to find that strength to be able to move forward even when we don't feel like it, even when we don't feel like getting out of bed, or we don't feel like leaving the apartment. I know for me specifically, if I'm really struggling, I do not want to leave. The only
Mm-mm.
thing that I'll do to leave is I will go exercise, and then I'll come right back home. And so
Yeah.
I don't
I
know if you have a very specific.
I'll make myself go on walks sometimes. I also like to exercise. But yeah, like the home base and like not wanting to leave, it almost feels like a metaphor for like not wanting to leave like the dark space in your head. Like you're just kind of stuck in it. But yeah, just getting out in whatever way you feel capable of, even if it's just walking to the mailbox and like taking a deep breath outside, like that's all good stuff.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just stack those small wins together. I love that, Haley.
Yay.
So, where can our listeners find you on social media, and how can they support you?
I am on Instagram at Haley Drew This. I'm also on TikTok, which I just started and I'm still very overwhelmed by, but it's kind of fun. Same name. And then I have a newsletter that is called Haley Wrote This, which I thought was pretty clever at the time. I know. And my website is just haleyDrewThis.com.
Great. I love that. Guys, definitely go give Haley a follow. Her work is absolutely amazing. And
Thank you.
she definitely has a supporter in me for years to come. And so, if you can go give her a follow and say what you liked about listening to her episode, that would be awesome. So, thank you again, Haley, for just spending this time with us, sharing a little bit about your story. And thank you to all of our listeners who continue to support. We want to thank our sponsors as well for making this possible. If you would like to allow us to continue our mission of changing the stigma in mental health and want to figure out how you can also support us, feel free to reach out to me at Mentally Shredded Podcast on Instagram, or at our website, ChristopherDWhedon.com. Soon, MentallyShreddedFoundation.com. So thank you again for tuning in. As always, love y'all. Peace.